And we are live, and
We
I'm
are
my
live.
yes. And are you in San Francisco?
Aren't you cute? No, I just pushed a weird button when I was trying to do this Zoom thing on a teleportal device.
It's great. So I'm here. I'm Kimberly Barrick, and this is on Unicorn Way here on YouTube. And this is our True North series. And this
Okay.
series is about exemplifying humans that we feel are really exemplifying true north, a divine mission, a divine purpose. They live in divine timing. And Michelle is, and I'm Cuss Snowful. And we already went over this, and I knew I'd do that. So
Just say it really fast or just kind of sneeze.
yeah, yeah,
Shuffle. Yeah.
Cassell. Yes. Sorry for that. Um,
Gesundheit.
yes. So I met Michelle a couple of years ago at a CPTSD, or complex post-traumatic stress seminar. And I actually, beforehand, we had connected. And then we met in person at that seminar, and she stole my heart from the moment I met her. She's got a contagious laugh. She's got an amazing spirit. She's a huge inspiration. And her story is amazing. Michelle, you, and I'm going to let you go into what you feel comfortable talking about, but you were trafficked at a young age.
Yes, I was. I grew up in a pretty crappy household. My dad was a truck driver and he was on the road a lot, and my mom was a bit crazy. So she was really, really mean. I mean, she even locked us in our bedroom till like super late in the day. We very rarely ate well. Like both, or all of my sisters and I have a weird little eating tick where we hear people eat funny because she would like eat super good food in front of us while we were eating like tuna on crackers and lima beans and just icky stuff. And so she's just, one of my sisters got a deficiency from it where she lost hair and teeth. And so this went on for a long time. And then like my great grandfather was a Nazi veteran, and my dad took it upon himself to marry a woman who was part Jewish, part African American, and even part Native. So, Grandpa considered us all dirty and like one of the people he locked up in concentration camps. So, it was just between my mom and my great grandfather, and then of course the what turns out when you have a father like that in my grandparents, things were just really not good. And so from a young age, I was just brought up to believe I didn't matter and my emotions didn't matter, and that I had to hide them to make somebody else feel better. And my great grandfather was the first person I remember sexually abusing me. I actually uncovered memories as early as infancy, but the first person I remember was my great grandfather sexually abusing me. And I always remember being forced to go say goodbye to him, and that's when it would happen. And I took on the belief that I needed to take care of my sisters and take the brunt of everything for them. My mom's beatings, my mom's horribleness, my great grandfather, everything. Like, I felt it was my job to protect them. And of course it killed me when it didn't work. But that was like the foundation I grew up on, and it went on like that for a long time until my dad said he saw things in me and my sisters, and he stopped driving truck. This was right after I was actually passed around the property of the family trucking company as well. I would clean the trucks and trailers, and a lot of the truck drivers were bikers when they weren't on the road. And so they would pass me around in the garages while I was cleaning their bunks. And that was the start of me being passed around. And I don't think there was money involved in that, but it definitely was pretty close to being trafficked. And then Dad saw that I was acting off whenever he'd come home from the road. And he was my hero. Like, whenever Dad was around, everything was perfect. He was amazing. He loved me to death. He took care of me. He was my hero, right? And then after he stopped driving truck, he got a job on a construction job, and he got hurt. And so Mom had to go back to work, and he took a liking to CB radios because he was a truck driver. So, they talked on CB radios to have friends. And so he took that with him, and he had this passion to have the most powerful CB radio antenna there is, right? So he could stomp everybody else. Men got to be powerful, right? So he built this antenna that was just ginormous, and he exceeded the limits, and it went back and hit the power lines. So he died by being electrocuted by putting that up. And I remember the whole scene. It was just disgusting. The smell, the sight, the whole entire city block was out for 2 weeks. This was just when they started doing all that, don't dig before you call, and, watch out for power lines. So I remember at the hospital, somebody thought it would be a good idea for a 12-year-old to say goodbye to the body. And so I saw my father, my hero, dead from electrocution, which was something a little girl should never have to see. And it wasn't long, like literally the night he died, my mom had a man in bed with her, in his bed. And, she admitted herself into a psych ward at one point, saying it was all our fault and we ruined her whole life. And so, it just kept going on, my mom's abuse. And I remember after she got out of the psych unit, she met a new guy. The guy she spent the night with, he's the man she's married to now. He stuck around through all of her crap, and now he's married to her. But she met this new guy right after she got out of the psych unit and got us back. Of course, she got Social Security, so she had to have that money back, which means she had to have us back. And I remember she moved us in next door to him. He had 3 kids. And so now I was caring for 6 kids as she ran around with him. I think it was less than a year, $150,000 was completely blown. And it wasn't on no extravagant house. We didn't have nice cars. It was just stupidity, pure stupidity and drugs. And it wasn't long before I found out the hard way that this new man was a pedophile. He molested me, and then he started passing me around to his friends. And then he had one of his friends put in charge of me. And this friend would collect money or goods for my torture. He also branded me during this time. This was all around the age 12, 13, right after seeing my dad die. Like, I was prime real estate for a trafficker, sexually abused, broken, thinks she's worthless. He saw it from a mile away. And this went on for about a year. I remember being kept in the basement with this guy under close watch always. I was only allowed out for school. Occasionally I'd go out for other things, but he was always like, I had to hold his arm. I couldn't make eye contact. And then, of course, there was the occasional house call. I remember my worst customer was a doctor, and he was brutal, absolutely brutal. And, I had all different types. I had the nice guys, I had the quick ones, and then I had the ones who wanted to torture you. And I was always told, when I asked my mom about, I never really told her, I guess, everything. I think it's hard for me to believe that she didn't know. I mean, she was right there in the home. How could she not know? And I would tell her that bad things were happening, and I was being raped and used sexually against my will, and that he would take me out to his friends and bad things would happen. And I was always told that that's how love was supposed to be, that I was supposed to submit to my male figure, and it didn't matter how he wanted it. That's what I was supposed to do. And you remember that? I always remember that. Do you ever hear that song Fancy by Reba McEntire? Mm-hmm. I always lose it at that one part because it reminded me of the things she always used to say, don't fail me, Fancy. Just do what the man asks you to do, you know? And that's how she was then and always has been. It didn't matter what kind of abusive man I had. It was, he's your man. You do what he says. You know, if he hurt you, what did you say? What did you do? Why did, you know? And so, yeah, this went on for a while. I would always be told that, or that if I didn't be good, they would start in on my sisters. And as you know, I had this huge calling to take care of them. And so I would always submit, you know, occasionally I'd try to fight it, but then I would get hurt. So I remember, you know, a lot of just dissociating. There was so much dissociation. It was insane. And then, you know, it went on for about a year. And then one of my sisters broke down one day and said that my stepdad had started molesting her. And I lost it. I was like, you know, you guys said you wouldn't do this if I submitted. And I mean, I didn't say that, but I was just so furious. Like, that was it. That was the last straw for me. And the next day, after I found out that had happened 2 times without me knowing, and I remember the night she said it happened was the very first night and only night that I can remember that guys didn't come through that basement door. Was the night he was in the other room hurting her. And I remember laying there thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to leave me alone tonight. And the whole time he's doing it to her. The guilt of that rips me apart all the time. And so, you know, we went to the school. The school, of course, did what schools do, and they send people in. And right away, Mom said we told, so we had to go. We got shipped to my grandparents' house, and she took the rest of the money she had from my dad and got him a lawyer, got him off on a plea bargain with no time. He even got his own kids back.
Wow.
And that was, I never really had to see him again after that, because, you know, we got sent to my grandma's. I don't know what happened between my mom and him. I'm not sure, but I know it wasn't long before she came back and said she wanted us back. And so we were sent into a room, 3 kids that were totally effed up, to decide who to go with. Do we stay with our grandparents or do we go to our mom? We said, we're not willing to lose another parent. Of course, we chose Mom. And I remember going back to her, and at that point she had met another guy who was a transvestite. So, you know, I don't have anything against transvestites, but being 13 years old, after what I'd went through, seeing a man prance around in my clothes after never seeing anything like that my whole life,
sure,
it was a bit intense.
sure.
and so you know, nobody explained to me what it meant. Nobody explained to me, you know, any of that stuff. But it was definitely awkward. And I remember with my mom's first boyfriend, he was a pot and a crack dealer. And so I was introduced to that too, along with my pain and my struggles. Of course, they would drug me, you know, tell me, here, this will make it easier. And so I did it, you know, I did the drugs, and that just helped me dissociate even more. So, you know, now I'm back with Mom and I'm doing drugs. I'm smoking weed like crazy. I'm putting whatever I can in my nose, doing acid, getting drunk, sleeping around. And I met this guy, and he moved to Texas, and my mom said, you know, why don't you go ahead? It'll give me more money for your sisters. He's your boyfriend. You love him. You should go there. And so she shipped me to Texas on a Greyhound bus at 14 years old, and told me the same old line. He's your man. Just do your best. We can't afford you anyways. So go do this for the family, you know? And so I did. I went, and I remember within a few days after being there, he took me out to meet some of his friends. Now, I don't know if, I'm sure you know about hot spots for trafficking. I remember he lived in like Greenville, and we drove far. It was just outside of Houston to meet his friends one night, and his friends turned out to be in a gang. And so before I know it, I was beaten within an inch of my life and forced to be trafficked around this gang in Texas. for the course of a whole summer. And my mom stopped taking my calls as soon as I left. I had no way out. I was stuck there, nowhere to go, no one to call. And I remember one day it dawned on me. I remembered out of nowhere, I'd gotten the crap beaten out of me. And I woke up with the phone number in my head. And it was that first guy she spent the night with, the guy who she's married to now, his number, his mom's number. And so I called him when I got left alone. And he set it up for me to have a bus ticket waiting at the bus station. And I remember running as fast as I can to that bus station and getting on that bus and coming back. And so I got back, and that's when I really picked up the form of an alter ego. I started calling myself Shelly. I started suicide attempts, hair pulling to try and stop the thoughts, cutting myself, burning myself, thinking if I had to smell my dad's electrocuted body, then I might as well smell it for real, from the flashbacks, of course. It was so much. And I remember my favorite pain of choice was hunger pains and starvation. And so I'd starve myself and binge and purge. It was like revenge on this body that betrayed me, right? And I just really went somewhere bad really fast. I wanted to die. And I remember I had like my whole funeral planned out. I had my death planned out. I had it all planned out. And I was using inhalants. I started inhaling stuff. When I couldn't get drugs, I would inhale stuff. I was shooting up. I was just doing all kinds of crappy stuff and sleeping with people. It was like sex was the way I learned dissociation. Mm-hmm. And now it was like my chosen form of leaving reality. And, I remember trying to learn about it any way I could so I could use it to my advantage. And if I gave it before it was taken, I felt more control. So that's what I did, right? Mm-hmm. And that's just how I lived. I remember dancing in dope houses for money. I remember sleeping with people for bigger bags. It was ridiculous. And this went on for a while. Every guy I ever was with cheated on me or beat the crap out of me. And I just lived like that. I don't know. It was like it was normal. It was like it was normal, or I just assumed this was the best I could get. And I met a guy who introduced me to meth. Surprisingly, I hadn't had meth yet at that time. And of course, meth was better than anything else I tried. And I was so hooked, man. I moved into the dope house so fast and made it, dealt it. It was horrible. But we went through our phase on that. We got busted. We got raided. Thank God. And we decided we wanted more. That must have been a kid, right? So we started trying to get pregnant. And I think it was 2 years and my shroom addiction later, I found out I was pregnant. And right away, he got abusive into the pregnancy. And it went off and on with him for a long time. I can honestly say that baby really did save me from a lot. I was more careful about my partying. I still did it, but I was more careful about it. And it only happened when she wasn't around. I mean, I'd party with my friends, but I wouldn't do the promiscuous partying. But I did stop all other drugs except for pot and pills, because back then pills weren't a problem yet. And I drank a lot. And it was just like that for years. One of my promiscuous party nights, I even had a run-in with a date rape drug. And that was, I don't know. I mean, it's weird when you think of like dissociation because you're being like forced into something, but the date rape drug, it like made it so like the flashes were different. Mm-hmm. And it really sucked. I remember waking up the next day. I never got so drunk or I never ended up in a way where I woke up and I didn't know how I got there. And I woke up the next day on my patio. Like they just left me on my patio. It was messed up. So yeah, that went on and on and on. I left her dad finally. Dated crappy dudes. But then I met the man who'd be my husband in 2008. And I remember within a year, things started coming to the surface that were showing that he had a problem. And he admitted in one night that he was a severe alcoholic. And I told him, you have to quit. I have a daughter. I can't have this going on around her. I have to support her. And he snapped. He tried to kill himself. I watched him pull the trigger. Thank God the gun jammed. But the feeling of seeing somebody pull a trigger and you think they're going to blow their brains out is just ridiculous. But so yeah, I seen him to the hospital, and he was bad. He was one of those alcoholics where literally when you quit, you go to intensive care. Mm-hmm. And he went to inpatient treatment program, and it was there that they told him that he could get extra points if he went to church. And so he did, and his family could meet him there. So I went and met him because I told him I would support him through his recovery. I didn't know if we'd get back together. It all depended on his recovery. But I'd support him through it. So I went there, and I remember being so scared. I remember Mom saying everything was God's fault and God made everything happen to me, and I was scared. I was terrified to go to church. I was freaking terrified. It was so weird. And I went, and they were so welcoming, so kind. The pastor was a biker. He was just covered in tattoos. He even said the word piss in his sermon. It was like, dude, like, wow. And it was just, I was still really reluctant. I wasn't all, yeah, with my hands in the air during worship, but I really enjoyed it. And they had a band, music that would like knock the ceiling off. I was like, this is not the church that I knew,
Yeah.
And so I kept going, and I really enjoyed it. And it was a Christian non-denominational church, so they accepted all walks of faith. But it was really cool, and so through that in AA and Al-Anon, we made it through his alcoholism. He still to this day hasn't drank again. But at some point, I kept using. The problem was with him, not with me, right? So I kept using. I kept doing drugs. I kept being dumb. And it wasn't long before he started smoking pot with me. And then life became all about pot, right? We started growing it. We started making pot wax. We even started the house on fire, and he lost all of his hair and his eyebrows. And we were like, oh, it's not the drugs. It's not the drugs. It's the people. It's everybody around us. We even were homeless at one point in the middle of a cold Minnesota winter with 3 kids, because it was right after his recovery, and he started doing really well. He decided he wanted kids. So we started having kids. And so after things got really bad with the marijuana and my drinking and my pills and my promiscuity, because he was like, oh, swinging sexy. So we were swingers, and it was not good. People say that stuff works, and it doesn't work. So we said, well, let's just run away. And we came to Arizona to get away from all the others, right? We got here, and nothing got better. It was all about getting pot as I supported us. I remember one night I came back without a bag, and I told him the dealer told me that if I wanted to continue to get bags from him, I had to sleep with him. And I was like, no, I'm not, no. And I told him, I said, seriously? And he said, well, what's the big deal? We've swinged before. And I was like, I don't know. I don't feel comfortable with this. And I told the guy I wasn't comfortable with it. And he said, that's okay. I prefer my white chicks to squirm a bit. And I was just like, no.
Yeah.
No. And when I told him that, he said, so you're bringing a bag home on Friday, right? And I said, no. So I stopped getting him pot. He went somewhere bad fast. And I went somewhere bad fast too, because of course I could still smoke with my friends at work. And so I'd come home high and he didn't have any. So he was mad. And then it was like right around that time, my oldest daughter had come to me and told me that some really bad things happened to her that I didn't know about. And it was through the people that I brought in and out of her life. And it knocked me on my ass. And I asked her, why didn't you tell me? And she just said I was scared. And now that we're here, far away from them all, I felt safe enough to tell you. But that's all I want to say. I want you to know that's why I hate you. Don't ask me to talk to you anymore. And it brought me to my rock bottom. All I could think was she was going down the same path. It was just before that time too. She would rebel. She would say the same things to me that I said to my mom. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it until later, but my responses were the same responses my mom gave to me. Mm-hmm. Of course, they weren't about men yet, but, it was like this. And then I started researching my mom and her life and where she came from. It wasn't even until that time that I found out that she was part Jewish, Native, and African American. I never understood why my grandfather called us dirty and that we belonged in a concentration camp. I didn't get it. And I just figured I sucked. There was something wrong with me. But when I started looking into things, I found out that I found that out about my mom. So, she has a past of captivity, and like all the way back in her generations, there's captivity, there's slaughter, there's, trafficking, there's sexual abuse, there's all of that. And then, I looked back in my dad's side and I seen the same stuff. And I'm like, this is the pattern. This is a generational curse. And I'm passing it down to my daughter and soon to be my two youngest daughters. And it hurt so bad. And I remember feeling so guilty and ashamed and like, how could I have let this happen? And I started researching the dudes I'd been with, everything. I was researching it all. And at first it was just all self-condemnation. Like, it was like, I did this. I suck. I really do suck. I am horrible. And I'd get wasted. I'd smoke till I couldn't move. I'd clean until I couldn't clean anymore just to feel somewhat in control, Mm-hmm. And right around that time, CPS had came into our lives. They were in our lives a while back over some other crap, but they left and we thought it was over. And all of a sudden they showed up at our door saying they needed further interviews with my teenager because they never interviewed her. She was still with her dad. And I was like, crap. And I remember she asked me, do I tell them what happened to me, Mom? And I remember with every inch of my being, I wanted to say, no, don't tell them. Don't tell them anything. Keep it to yourself. It's got to be a secret. But after what I researched, I barely mustered out. Tell them whatever you feel led to tell them, and I will support it. And she told them. And so, of course, this added extra interviews. I didn't tell my husband about what happened to her. I didn't tell him. And I just went down the wormhole. And so he sees me going down the wormhole. He's freaking out because he can't get his drugs. My daughter's acting weird. All this stuff. Now CPS is at the door talking to me and my daughter privately. He thinks it's about him. It's just a mess. And I remember I came out of the room and the CPS guy left and my husband said, I need to go clear my head. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go for a bike ride. All right. He left and called maybe 5 hours later and said he was in Minnesota and he wasn't coming back. Now I wanted revenge. So I started calling hitmen. I spent every penny I had to pay people to kill the guy that hurt my daughter, to kill my abuser.
I wasn't expecting you to say that. So it kind of
Oh, I went down the revenge hole so bad, so bad. I was trying to press charges. I was just to the top with revenge.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, I wanted to hurt everybody so that I didn't have to look at myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And nothing worked. Nothing worked. Everything, I got shot down. My hitmen would take my money and then I'd never hear from them. It's just,
Thank
it's
God.
stupid. Yeah, right? It's just so ridiculous. And then I remember somebody said, hey, come to church with me. I was like, fine, okay. So I went, and it really woke me up a little bit, and I cut down on my drinking and my smoking, but then there was that service. I'm sure anybody who's ever heard religion knows what I'm talking about. If you just call out to God, he will come to you in your aid. I went home that night with so much alcohol, ready to drown myself in anger of God not helping me how I saw fit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I cleaned. And when I ran out of stuff to clean, I just broke down. And I was crying, and I started screaming out to God, where are you? Like, you need to help me. And it was like, for the first time, it was like full submission. I don't care what it takes. I don't care what I have to do. Just help me. Help me. I'm yours, for once in my life, I'm yours. I will do whatever you say. And I remember waking up the next day, and I drank a lot that night. A lot. I'm talking like $100 worth of alcohol. I had no hangover. No hangover. None whatsoever. No headache, no vomiting. I wasn't even still drunk. And I had this huge urge, and it wasn't like urge to revenge or like to get back at somebody. It was an urge to know more about what happened, and all the stuff I'd learned, it came back to me, but it was different. It was like, how can I use this?
Mm-hmm.
And so I dove back in. I started praying for a church like the one back home. And I just started researching everything. That's when I fell along the lines of different seminars and different self-help things and gurus. And I was all over it. I was all over it. You couldn't stop me. I was working in a call center, and I'm not kidding you. I would have an earbud in my ear all day long, listening to this stuff.
And we talked about this.
Yeah, I would
That's
listen.
because you and I, when we met, we were both very much sponges with wanting to really take in this information about complex post-traumatic stress and flashbacks and
Yep. How to love yourself better, PTSD, codependency, because that was a big one I was running into. And then, the opposite, like psychos and, narcissists and whatever, all that stuff. So I would just listen to it all day. I would listen to a playlist of a certain guru, and then I would start over and I would listen to it taking notes, and then I would listen to it again as I read the notes. And every time it was like I was new, like I was looking at it with new eyes, and I had 4 that I would listen to regularly, and I would listen to each one every day of the week. And then the 5th day, it would be whichever one called to me the most. And it was like constantly, and I would print things out, and I would do it when I went home. And, I was still getting high and drinking, but it wasn't nowhere near like, it was nowhere near like it was. And that went on. And then all of a sudden my husband called and said he wanted to come back. This was right around the time I was like, God, give me a church that fits me, that doesn't want me to be some crazy weird Jesus freak. But, I love Jesus, but I didn't want to be that creepy Jesus freak, and and so right around this time he called, and I said, okay, go ahead, come back, get help, and we'll go from there. And so he wasn't staying with me. He went to a shelter, which for the first time in my life, I didn't let a guy come running back. I was like, nope, you're going to a shelter. And he did. He went to a shelter, and at his shelter, they told him about a church like what we described. And I went to that church, and it was just, I'd never been moved like that in a church service. Never. and they talked about real life stuff. Like they mentioned trauma and PTSD in the very first sermon I heard. And it was like, wow, you know, it was super cool. And right away we went to a course to learn more about God. And wouldn't you know it, the person who was running the course was a person who ran their recovery program. So right away we started that, and it's a recovery program that's like the 12 steps, but it includes like biblical stuff and the Beatitudes, like Rick Warren, if anybody's heard about him.
I've heard, yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. And I've been going ever since. Through that program, like I just grew and grew between that and all the stuff I'd learned. Like I just kept growing. I never stopped. And I'm still growing. My oldest daughter, who said she'd never talk to me again, who hated my guts, also, when I took that on, didn't want nothing to do with God either. Big surprise, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I brought her one night. On the night a famous speaker came to town. Supposedly, I guess he's famous with like all kinds of young kid singers and stuff. And she was so mad when I pulled into the parking lot of my church. Like, she was so mad. Just calm down. You'll thank me later. And she did. She thanked me right away by the end of the night. She chose to start going to youth group. She set up her own baptism. She joined. I remember I also fought cervical, ovarian, and uterine cancer during this time as well. While I was laid up, she came to me and said, "Mom, I want to be baptized." And I said, "Okay, let me look into how that happens." And she said, you don't have to. I'm already signed up. You just have to be there. I was like, okay. And then she said, "I also want to do the A21 walk to bring awareness to human trafficking." She didn't know my story yet. And I was just like floored. And I was like, okay, what does that take? And she said, "It takes a sponsor, but I already got myself one of those too. So this is when it's happening." And she brought my whole family to do this walk. And it was beautiful. It was so amazing. And she's just been growing ever since. The recovery program I go to does recovery for your family. So while I'm in there learning a lesson on forgiveness, they're teaching my kids the same lesson, but kid level. Yeah. So we get in the car at the end of the night and we're all forgiving each other and talking about forgiveness. And it's just amazing. And it was through that same recovery program that I remember going to a share group. I had already worked a step study, and the step studies say, "Oh, God's going to use this for good." I was still like, "No, he's not. He didn't know what I got in my closet." Like, and I said something in a share group, like, "How's he going to use this for good?" Like, seriously. And I just puked it all out, like everything I'd been through. It was probably the first time I shared it other than with my sponsor. And after the share group, this girl came up to me and she said, "I know I'm not supposed to talk to you about this outside of the group, but I have somebody I need you to talk to." And I'm like, okay. And so she said, "I've got somebody who's going to use what you have for good." I'm like, okay. So she gave me this person's number, and it turned out to be an executive director for a woman's advocacy that fights against the exploitation, violence, and trafficking of women and children. Mm-hmm. And of course, we hit it off in our interview. And I just started with her. I started doing outreach. I was on fire for it. Like the very first outreach I remember, before it, I was terrified. Like I was like, what if I like what I see? What if I want to go back to it? What if I get judgmental or I can't do it? And, like those thoughts of being with random people, what if they come back to me? I was with women and men and I enjoyed it. So it's like, I was scared, but it was so weird. I remember standing at the door of that first club we went into, because we do strip clubs and street outreaches. Mm-hmm. And it was like something came over me. It was like this, it was the Holy Spirit. I don't know, but it just like came over me. Warrior mode just kicked in. And I felt like I was going in there with like a major shield around me. And
the full armor of God.
Yes. I couldn't see anything but the eyes of these girls.
Yeah.
And they're standing in front of me butt naked, and I had other girls with me on their first night that like would run back to the car and be like, you didn't tell me that there was going to be naked people everywhere. Well, we told you were going to a strip club. You know, it's so true that this isn't cut out for
everyone.
everybody, you know, and that's what really drives me is I know that I can do this. I know that it's cut out for me. And I know that there's not many that can handle it. Like there's people that will give, there's people that will make gifts, there's people that will pray. I mean, we have an avenue for everybody in our advocacy. But very few of us are able to go on the front lines and just walk up to a pimp and a woman standing next to him and tell her, you know, she has resources.
There's another way.
Yeah. And so I just haven't stopped. And I'm now assistant executive director for that advocacy. I've launched 2 different teams for the advocacy. I've launched the love team, which gives a place for like the ladies in CR, because we like our advocates that go on outreach to have been trafficked or experienced the life in some way so that it's not too much for them.
Yeah.
And so I know when I started sharing my testimony, I had so many people that were like, I want a piece of this. I want to help. I want to do something, but I can't go into a club. I am now walking up to a pimp. So I came up with this whole branch where they can like start prayer warrior circles and make gifts. And we have fellowship and community events now. None of this stuff was in place when I started in the advocacy. And I'm all about community. I'm all about coming together because that energy goes out on outreach with us.
Sure.
And so I created this team. I kind of cooperated with my partner and we came up with the Flame team that now travels and like brings awareness to all kinds of places to like youth. And you've seen some of it on Facebook.
Yeah.
So
I've seen you grow since that. Michelle's come up and stayed with me a couple times in Sedona. Her daughters have painted Paladin. So the work that I do with trauma and you know, my background, my trafficking story is a little different, but my heart is like it's the same but different. And I think that's what's so amazing. God brings those together. Like he brings you who you need to be with. And our connection was peas and carrots from the beginning. Your laugh is contagious. I just always felt so safe with you, and watching your story grow, it's just been so inspiring. Both of us from that moment, from the CPTSD seminar, again, that's complex post-traumatic stress. Absorbing that information and how it grows and how it does change us once we start to understand what's been going on with us. And, you know, I've watched your oldest daughter grow with you, and I see the pictures and the videos of your family and the love and the growth that you and your husband have made, the recovery with that. And God, it's just, I'm getting goosebumps because it's, you know, it's just so beautiful, Michelle. It's so inspiring to watch your ministry grow.
It's been quite a trip. It definitely feels like I'm looking back at somebody else's life, or that I'm looking at somebody else's life now. I mean, it blows my mind. My daughter started doing outreach with us. I don't let her go into the CD ones. We have one like every other month that's really tame. It's like Scottsdale, right?
Yeah.
So they're like different there, you know. So she'll come out on that one. She doesn't go in. She just stands outside and hands bracelets to people that go in. So we have these bracelets. Oh, I wish I would have brought one. We make these bracelets and we pray over them. And I've probably handed out over 5,000 bracelets since I started the bracelet thing. And I always tell people, because now I'm handing them out in my meetings. I've sent them to people. So I have bracelets in New York. I have bracelets in Minnesota, California from when I went to Saddleback conferences. You know, I have some in Texas. I have them everywhere, right? And we tell people that when you're wearing it, if you feel it catching your attention, or if you find yourself fiddling with it, think about what you're thinking about at that moment. If you're stressing about something, know that somebody's praying over every bead on that bracelet and every bracelet that was made with the same intentions as the one they're wearing. It's like a chain, right? And I said, if you're not thinking about something in particular at that time, but it's catching your attention, that means you need to pray for our team and the women we hand bracelets out to on outreach. And
I love it.
It's amazing, right? So she'll hand out the bracelets at the doors. It was funny. We just went on an outreach. I think it was last month, and we go to like certain safe places for breaks in between because we don't pee in those clubs, right? So we go to certain safe places in between our stops, and if we see somebody who's like a working girl on the way, we'll stop and we'll give her a bracelet or a gift or something with resource cards attached to it. And we saw this girl, and that was that particular outreach. The Holy Spirit told us we needed to hand out blankets. Somebody gave us a buttload of blankets, and like, okay, find some homeless people, give out blankets, it's about to get cold. So we seen this homeless girl and we brought her a blanket, and it still blows my mind because she did not look like a dancer, right? And we usually hand out the bracelets to dancers. I give them to random people to give out to whoever they see, so that could have been it. But she was wearing one of our bracelets.
Wow.
And she was just all dirty, all matted up. Her hair was crazy. So I don't know if she'd been like trafficked or had been a prostitute, or if somebody gave it to her because she asked for help. I don't know. All I know is she was wearing one of our bracelets. And we asked her where she got it, and she was just like, an angel gave it to me. And it was crazy to see that our bracelets get around.
It's beautiful.
Right?
It's so beautiful.
I'm gonna have to bring you one.
And I'll send you a True North shirt, or you can get a True North or a Unicorn Way when you come up here, and I'll definitely, this is my,
yes,
this is the one that, you know, that's what this is, that's what that's for, is the prayers and the,
yeah.
it's been absolutely amazing. And you know, I would like to do, anybody in your outreach that would like to you know, tell their story. I really want this platform. Shame dies when stories are told in a safe place.
Yes.
And your story,
yeah.
your story is your glory. And I really want to have this be a platform for people to share their testimonies and witness and your relationship with Christ, and how just how inspirational that is, and that it does make a difference, that together we can change this. We
Yes.
can make a difference, and that sunlight is the best disinfectant.
It is just sharing that it can be done, and the hope that comes from it. It's crazy magnifying and magnetizing, you know. And if you need anybody, I have advocates that would be willing to share.
I love it.
You know, even my sister's in the advocacy now too. She moved down here and she's walking the same recovery path
that's
with me.
the sister that came here with, that's beautiful.
Yeah, well, I came in there with both of them, but my youngest moved here 6 months ago, and she'll tell you, when she moved here, she had no intentions of talking to me. She hated my guts, but the minute she saw me and the light that was in me, that I have trouble seeing myself, she wanted what I had. And so she's asked for resources, and so we'll watch PTSD videos together and codependency videos. She started going to the same recovery meetings. She's in the advocacy, does outreach with us. My other sister launched her own recovery at her church, which is against those meetings. She got them to do it. This is a Pentecostal church, so they're pretty strict, and she's now running her own recovery meeting like mine there, getting the same healing. So I definitely have some people, if you want anybody to share, they're all for it. My partner will definitely be out for it. She's got quite a story as well.
Yes. This is, my true north, my divine purpose, my divine mission. Is here with the horses, helping humans move through trauma, a safe place to do that, a safe place to share stories. And those of us that have been through, it's because we've been through it. And, our stories may be different in some ways, but they're very much the same in so many. And for me, it goes back to childhood trauma. And so often I think that oh, well, my trauma didn't look like that, so it's not, trauma
is trauma.
is trauma. And we live on a traumatized planet. And so the more that we can talk about how trauma changes a person, but how there is life after trauma, there truly is.
Yes.
And when we have that true north, divine timing, divine communication with our creator, something amazing happens. And I believe, like I said, when you're sharing your story, and that takes courage, but through courage, legions of support show up in ways that you wouldn't even imagine. Like that woman wearing your prayer bracelet, like those things that happen that are like, wow. Like I had a woman that was talking to a friend of mine in New York, and horses came up, and my friend showed her a picture, and it was Paladin, and she's like, oh, I had a session with Paladin.
That's so amazing, Kim. And I want to say that what you're doing helps so many people. You offering your place and your heart and your spirit, it changes lives. When I started coming to stay there, I was in a horrible place. I was miserable. I was sad, and I was so wrapped up in trying to figure out how I was going to do things. And coming there, getting away from all of this, it changed me. I think you remember I was coming there at least once or twice a month. And I remember leaving there feeling so filled up and refreshed. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have had the drive in the beginning of all this to keep going and looking for my passion and my outreach, and to keep working those steps and to keep diving into those tools. So much meditation happened there just because it was quiet, it was calm, and you're so kind. And the horses, I think I told you, like, sitting there in front of those horses, listening to them chew cud, it does something to your soul. Like, you would think not, but it does. It does. The coffee even tasted different, for crying out loud. So, and sharing it with my kids, like, they still remember you and they still talk about you. And it's just something about you and your presence and your energy, and then you throw some Sedona and some horses on top of it. Like, that's some life-changing stuff. Seriously, I bring girls. I've brought in carloads of girls there, and when I stayed there with you, I remember I came up with this route, this like my own little trail I would do through Sedona every time I come. I did it when I'd stay with you, and I'm passing that on to girls that I sponsor. And we do it as we come through our step studies. Like, I brought one girl there. I'll never forget. I brought her there, and she had a story like mine, like, oh my gosh. And I brought her there to do her inventory. And if you know anything about doing your inventory in the 12 steps, you open everything up and you have to share it with somebody for the first time ever. I brought her there and we spent the night there. And, I took her up to the airport Vortex. We went to the Chapel of the Holy Cross. We went out to Chocolatry.
Yeah.
We did the whole trail. And, I remember when she left, she talked about the peace that she felt. And I learned that trail. I got that chance to do that by coming to stay there with you, and I can't express how much that time means to me. And I'm actually freaking dying that I haven't had it recently, you know,
Get your
and
butt up here. You're so busy with all this growth and going to school for ministry. I mean, you're
yeah,
doing
that's right. I'm doing that too.
so much amazing growth. And you know, Michelle, when you came up here, I mean, I was working through my stuff and
I
feeling like
remember.
so you were an inspiration for me to keep going. And so that's what we do by sharing our stories. We're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's there's so much peace in knowing that
Yeah.
no matter how different our lives are, how certain parts of our stories are different, at the core of it is wanting to heal trauma and wanting to live a life after trauma. And then,
Yeah.
so it's, you know, we're just knowing that we're not alone and we're sharing with each other.
Yeah.
So you were just as inspirational to me.
I'm glad. I do remember one particular time where you were struggling when I came up there, and I remember how amazing it felt to give back to you,
Thank
to
you.
just be there for you. And, you know, that saying, you're not alone, it is so powerful. And
Yeah.
sharing your stuff is so amazing. I think part of my testimony that I share when I go out and do things is how you can't keep what you have unless you give some away, you know. And I think that's one of the best things about trauma survivors is once you find even a little bit of
Ooh.
being able to overcome, just a little bit of being able to overcome,
Yeah.
you have this drive
Yeah.
to share it, to
Mm-hmm.
give it back, to pass it on, to pass on your flame, right?
Yeah.
And it's huge. And we think that our presence is like a burden, and that's because of something somebody else put in their head. You
Yes.
know, it's not a burden. And some of my most healing moments were reaching out to others and helping others.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think we're a burden, we need to remember that we just might be what's healing somebody else by taking that hand that they're offering you.
Yes.
It's so amazing.
And
So
that's true north, divine mission,
yes.
divine purpose. And we all
Yeah.
have one.
Mm-hmm.
Our creator loves all of us.
True story.
Yeah. And we're all worthy of that love. And
Yeah.
so by again sharing our stories and reaching out and just knowing that we're not alone, it's amazing. And I just love you. I just absolutely, and you're just one of the funniest women. I just love you. And
Well, I
I
love you
really
back.
thank you. And I look forward to you coming up here. I'm going to download this. I'm going to get your bio that you'll send me so I can put it in the YouTube. You'll be able to get a hold of Michelle and I at the bottom or underneath the YouTube descriptions. This will be, and please, watching this, if you would go to Unicorn Way and subscribe, hit the little bell. As we build the audience, we want to get this out there. We want to, you know, keep this going and sharing true north stories. So if you'll send me that bio, and then
Of course.
you and I'll chat. We'll share this everywhere that you know, far and wide. And
Yes.
we'll get together, and anybody that you know that would like to share their story, and then we'll get you up here for a visit. We'll get you a True North tank top, and I'll have one of your bracelets,
Yay!
and
I'm down.
we'll just keep this going. You know what I'd
Okay.
like to do is have you as a come back as a guest as many times as you'd like, but I would like to talk about. I did an interview regarding decriminalization, and so
Okay.
decriminalization then allows, from what I understand from my research, to go more after the trafficking.
Yes.
So I would like to talk to you more about steps that people can take, how, again, ways that you can get a hold of Michelle if you'd like to help her in her outreach if you're in the Phoenix area, or if you'd like to make a donation and support her ministry. There'll be ways for you to get a hold of her down in the description. And then I'd like to talk to you, about decriminalization, ways that we can like go further into how people that are watching this can become a part of this outreach.
Okay.
So that
That
we
sounds
can.
amazing. I'll put some links to my website for the advocacy. I'll throw in a couple safety tips and tools links that I use when I do like awareness seminars and stuff like that. And then I'll put in a couple other ones that I have that I use. Like we have a lot of people asking about tips and tools for teens.
Yes.
Because that's where a lot of trafficking
Yes.
occurs.
Yes.
So I'll put in a few websites for that. I'll send you my bio. And then anytime you want to talk about anything further, I'm always open to it. I totally love your face. So anytime.
I love your face too.
And yes, we will have to schedule a weekend for me to come up. My birthday is open, so maybe we'll have to throw it in there.
You better. Because I feel like there's just so much to talk about.
Yeah.
There's, this is such an in-depth subject, and even, people hearing it, I think, is really what it's about, because so many people, especially now, we're starting to hear more about it. So I like that, I like that it's starting to get out there, and it's not something that people need to put their head in the sand on, we have to deal with this. We have to have these honest conversations. So
I agree.
Yeah, I just don't think that one interview is enough.
Well, anytime. And I do agree. Prevention is the best tool for fighting this, but it's a lot harder to aim prevention, So I think the best way to aim prevention is to bring about awareness.
Yeah.
Just bring about awareness to it, and what to watch out for, and who to call, or who to send people to if they sense it or somebody's scared. I think that's a huge deal, is awareness, and letting people know that if they're caught up in the life, they don't necessarily go to prison anymore. There's resources for them to get out.
And this is where the decriminalization. I did an interview with a woman that is an advocate for that, and studying over in Portugal. So studying, I think New York had it on the ballot. I don't know if it went through, but they were talking about decriminalization. So, and then we can go into for-profit prisons. We can go into, there's so much.
Yeah.
There's so much to cover. You and I will sit down and maybe kind of see how that can progress with you and the people that you work with, and we can start having these discussions and get it out there for people.
Perfect. Sounds like a plan. I look forward to it, hon.
I adore you.
Well, back at you.
Kisses to your babies.
Okay. Well, just don't ever forget that adorness you see is also your reflection. So you have to adore yourself.
I love you.
I love you too, dear one.
All right. We're going to talk very, very soon. Actually, we'll talk. I'll let you know when I'm posting stuff, and we'll go with all that very soon.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Bye, sweetheart. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Bye.
Bye-bye.